The world is waking up, and you finding your way here today is no coincidence. The spirit world always has a way of guiding us where we most need to be at the absolute perfect time. I'm your host, Lindsay Morlock, and you're listening to the Guided Podcast, where we explore how the spirit world works on our behalf to guide us along our paths. This is where you'll learn how to live a life that is both conscious and connected, so you can supercharge your pathway to healing and open to life's magic and miracles. Come along this journey to see how guided you truly are. Hi, everyone. Welcome back for another week of the Guided Podcast. This week, I am so excited for you to meet our guest, Anna Sarnoski. Anna is an intuitive macrame artist, an energy healer, and an Akashic realm practitioner that channels the angelic realm. And after over a decade of working in higher education, Anna left a very successful career to become a stay-at-home mom. This change in lifestyle triggered her awakening and launched her on her spiritual path and journey to self-healing. She now takes the lessons she has learned and the skills that Spirit has taught her to guide her clients on their own journey to becoming self-healers. Anna channels energetic healing from the archangels, her own spirit-taught blend of quantum and Reiki healing to provide spiritual, emotional, and physical support. She also works with her spirit team and yours to create a one-of-a-kind energy-filled macrame pieces designed to support your journey through this life. So Anna, welcome to the show, and thank you so much for being here.
Thanks, Lindsay. I'm so excited to be here.
So to kick us off, Anna, I would love for you to dive into your awakening story and just offer the audience in whatever way you're comfortable, how your own personal journey with spirit and your own divinity unfolded.
Yeah. So, it's really funny because I feel like I've been doing this forever. But the reality is that my awakening really only happened within the last couple of years for me. As you mentioned, I worked in higher education for a really long time, and I left that field when I became a mom. When I had my second daughter, I actually developed postpartum depression, and I just was not able to handle the responsibilities of being a parent to two little girls and also the responsibilities of the job. So when that took place, Spirit actually stepped in for me and basically gave me a way out by having my job tell me, we don't have the budget to keep you part-time any longer. So it forced me to let go of that one ball that was a big ball that I was juggling, and I became a full-time stay-at-home mom. However, when I became a full-time stay-at-home mom, I felt that I had lost my independence. I felt that I no longer knew who I was. I lost the whole sense of achievement that I had always thrived upon that came to me from my career. And I just felt very lost. And a lot of that sense of loss started manifesting for me physically and emotionally. I started feeling a lot of pain in my body, and I started feeling emotions that just did not feel good. And I could never place my finger on what it was. So I went to numerous doctors, and they all told me, let's take this pill, let's work on your hormones, let's try and level you out. And none of that was helping me. I felt like I had really reached rock bottom. So there were days I remember when I was driving down the highway just wishing that a semi would just take me out and have it be done with. Like, I was that miserable. I felt that I was seeking out help, but nobody could really help or understand what it was that I was dealing with. But each time that I got into one of those episodes, it was always that feeling of like, well, my girls need me, that cannot be my truth. That can't be my pattern here. This is not where I need to be. And so Spirit, unbeknownst to me, stepped forward once again and started putting people in my life that understood what it was that I needed. First, they gave me a new integrative medicine doctor who said, we need to balance you out with these supplements because your stress levels are through the roof and they are creating imbalances for you. And that really helped. Then they brought forward an orthobiotomist who works with energy healing, and he helped to clear up some of the channels in my body. His name is Kalpesh Patel. He's wonderful. And then when those channels started clearing for me, we moved on to tackling some of my TMJ issues. They brought me a dentist that specialized in TMJ, so I was no longer taking muscle relaxers. And then they started working with me on my spiritual healing. One day, you and I were roommates back in grad school. I'm not sure if the audience knows that, but it was so funny because I had been really reluctant to joining Instagram. And during the COVID lockdown, I decided, I'm just going to do it. And I joined Instagram and I happened to see one of the posts that you had about a breathwork session. And my doctor had told me that I had forgotten how to breathe and I needed to relearn how to breathe. And so I said, sure, I'll step in there. And here's this class about breath work. I'll try it. I don't know what breath work is, but I'll try it. And so I did that. And, just tears started flowing. It was like such a big, massive, emergent, like just emotional release for me that I had no idea what had happened. And then I decided to do the recording again. And I remember as I was doing it, I felt somebody was watching me. And, I've always felt like a presence and I never quite put my finger on it. I grew up Catholic. So I was always told, these presences that there are, like, don't connect with them. They could be something that you don't want to experience. But this presence was just there and watching me. And I remember messaging you and saying, like, Lindsay, do I need to like sage my house? Like, is something going on? And you said to me, that is your guide. And the minute that you said those words, I just emotional release, like just burst into tears. And it was like such like a joyous moment for me. And I remember him being like, I just felt like he was like cheering, and when I learned his name, and I felt so immediately connected and at peace by finally like connecting with him. And I could see him just like clapping in the background.
I
And so
love
from
that.
there, like it just, he started sending me signs. I remember he sent me like a crawfish crawling across my driveway. Now, I don't live near any body of water, so I have no idea how this crawfish got there. But he just started sending me like these random signs that he was with me and present and sending me messages in this way. And yeah, that's really kind of how it all began. I feel like since my connection in these last few years, a lot of what spirit does for me is they push me off of a diving board. And sometimes I think I am so busy that I don't really realize like what the messages are that they're sending me, that they have to like shock me into it. So I remember my opening, I was laying in my bed, just asleep. And all of a sudden I started hearing light language in one ear and a vibration all through my body. And I started seeing symbols going on through my ceiling. And again, that was another way for them to like connect with me. Each time I was sick, they like sent somebody to sit with me at night, and I would wake up and I would see somebody standing by my bed and they would say, it's from Archangel Raphael's and he's here to like work with you on these specific things. And then they would do it. And they showed me in so many physical ways that they were there guiding me and supporting me, that there was no way that I could deny that there was a spiritual connection.
Yeah, I love all of that so much. And you can see where the breadcrumbs and those dots connect one thing to the next. And it's always easier to see in hindsight how the dots connect. But when we're going through it, it can be really challenging to be like, what is happening? So in the moment, when you go back to those early days of awakening and opening up, was it something that felt like, what is happening here? Or was it something that was more like, okay, we're just going to, keep following this but this isn't freaky at all. How did you kind of navigate your opening?
Yeah.
Because your opening happened quickly.
Yes, everything happened really, really fast. And it was a shock. And there were moments of immense fear. I remember after my opening, there were a couple nights when I was like, oh no, I can't go back to sleep. That was terrifying. And I remember, I think it was you getting a message that they wanted me to establish a different form of communication with them. So that's when I started picking up oracle cards and when I started picking up a pendulum and just learning different ways to communicate with them. And when I did that, it was life changing, because I now had a direct way to communicate and receive messages directly from source as opposed to just in my dreams. I could communicate now in the moment as needed. So establishing, I think, that form of communication with them really helped to ease my fears and knowing that everything that was happening for me was through a very loving lens and through a very supportive way that was not meant to fall into those old Catholic beliefs of the spirit world that, don't let out negative energies, don't associate with the spirit because you never know what you might open up or unleash. Mine has definitely not been like that at all. I've always felt at first I was timid, because that's how I had grown up. But the reality is that every single way that spirit has shown up for me so far has been very loving and very supportive and very gentle.
Yeah, that's my experience of spirit too. Not that they don't push us and challenge us, sometimes kicking us right off the ledge, like birds out of the nest, right?
Right?
Like jump, you're ready to leap, go. But it is always for our highest and best. It's not anything. It doesn't mean that some of the leaps don't scare us because we're human and we have that egoic part of us that might react to something pattern we're changing or something new or different that we're looking to experience. So where one of the things where we really differ is, my awakening, I went through very much on my own, right? Being single, not having children. But you've gone through your awakening with, married with 2 children. And I imagine that's such a different experience. I know for me, some days I feel like I don't know how people with families do this because I need a lot of alone time to be with spirit and my guides, but that's
Yeah.
obviously not reality. There's plenty of spiritual people who are, married with children or partnered in some way. So how did your family respond to the awakening and especially your girls?
Yeah, so that's so funny that you bring that up because I'm married to a scientist, right? And so for him, everything has to be very black and white. Like the gray is not an area that he thrives in. So for a while there, I kept what was happening to me hidden, that was just between me and spirit. And it felt so sacred. And I felt like I had to guard it. And I think gradually, as I went through my own healing process of developing a greater sense of confidence, developing a greater sense of self worth, it just became natural for me to speak to him about what it is that I was doing. And he just accepted it. He doesn't necessarily practice in the way that I practice, but he respects that it's, what I do. And he understands that the work I'm doing is important. And he respects it. And I'm here to support him through his own awakening journey now that I've awakened. And when he's ready, I will be there to help guide him. Now, with the girls, it's been so interesting because, they have just been so curious about everything that mommy is doing. And they just want to be involved. And so it's really been about changing my lifestyle around it. Yes, there are moments when I need to retreat to go and meditate. I need to take 10 minutes throughout the day. And where some people might be able to meditate for an entire hour, I have to break it up into chunks throughout my day. So I say, mommy's going to go in and meditate really quick. I'll be back out in like 10, 15 minutes. And we'll do that. And they understand that that is important. When I am pulling oracle cards, they love to be involved in the process. I let them look at my oracle cards, let them examine them. Well, what do you think this image says to you? And just working on keeping that sense of intuition alive for them. They utilize my pendulum as well. My oldest actually uses her own body as a pendulum, and I'll see her sometimes off in the corner in the yard talking with her guide, Lucy, and she's asking her questions. We talked a lot about keeping our vibes high and how important that is. And it was so funny because my oldest came home from school the other day and there was a big thunderstorm happening at pickup. And she said a lot of her friends were getting a little bit scared about this thunderstorm that was rolling in. And she said to them, we just need to keep our vibe high and think positively, and everything is going to be okay because we are being very supported and our guides are helping guide us through this. We're going to be okay.
That's amazing.
So, yes, I mean, they fully bought into it. I mean, they don't have to buy into it because they're already born with that. As we grow and as we experience life, that is an aspect of us that gets shut down. So my goal as they're developing is to keep that connection with spirit now. And I firmly believe that as long as they're connected to spirit throughout their lifespan, that they're not going to have these shocking awakening moments. My goal is to really help to make their transitions and help hopefully avoid a really stressful dark night of the soul period for them. Like we all typically have had one of those in our own awakening journeys. And I'm hopeful that I can help ease that for the girls by keeping their connection to spirit. During the fall equinox, it was funny because spirit actually told me very specifically, my guidance name is Victoria. And Victoria said, you need to come up with a ritual and you need to have your girls involved in it. And this is what the ritual needs to look like. And she literally, she said, go out and have them pick out nature items. Build a little circle, create a little fire within the circle, have them draw out things that they are releasing, and burn those. And, so we stand there in a little circle, we hold hands, we call in our angels and our guides. It's very witchy like, but it gets the message across for them. And the importance of ritual is so important because it's a tool that we utilize to help lead us to how we speak to spirit and how we can invoke spirit and welcome spirit into what it is that we are doing each day.
That's one thing I've always noticed is that you have this natural way of integrating spirituality just as you go about the course of your everyday life with the girls. Kind of like you were saying, whether it's, just letting them play with your oracle cards as you're doing your work and letting them be a part of it. I'm sure they've found your pendulum at times and are playing with your pendulum. I know babies who, friends of mine who have babies who see the pendulum and start playing with it. And it just becomes a tool that's a standard part of their everyday. And I know you've also used other things too, like coloring or, different ways of helping them stay open. So is there anything that you've found they especially are asking you, Mom, can we do this, or going back to that has made an impact on them in that way?
Yeah. So one of the things that we do is we do a lot of energy cleansing, and a lot of that is done through baths. And once again, we bring in the ritual. And so they love selecting crystals to put into the bathtub. We utilize some sea salt, and we Reiki infuse, basically our own brand of Reiki. We infuse it into the water, and we call upon our angels, and they know certain archangels that we can call upon to help us with cleansing and grounding. And we ask them to help us release energies from our bodies that don't belong to us. So those types of energetic practices are things that they have really embraced. When they are sick, I'll do some energy healing for them, and I'll channel Archangel Raphael, and they'll sit there with me and we work through that process, especially when they're having a rough time sleeping too. We will channel some energy and we'll go through our own grounding process to make sure that their own energy is safe and that they're feeling safe in their bodies. I feel that a lot of kids, as parents, we don't necessarily know what it is that they are processing, because their emotions just come and go so quickly. And so making sure that they are grounded and that they're feeling protected is a really important tool that we can teach our kids how to do.
Yeah, you're right. A lot of us were products of the generation where these gifts were shut down or dismissed or, whatever prompted us to disconnect from that part of ourself, right? To separate us. I do think these kids now are coming in so much more awake to begin with, and they're much more receptive to what we're putting out there anyway, because they are much more connected to the truth of who they are. And because we're all waking up, hopefully we're able to support that awakening process in a more natural unfolding where it's just part of their everyday lives.
Yeah, I remember my oldest, when she was a toddler, she kept talking about her other mommy. And I was like, what other mommy? Like, are you talking about? You only have one mommy. And I think it was her guide, and she said, it's okay. And I remember she would tell me, Mommy, it's okay. You can go to bed. My other mommy is here. And I was like,
oh, wow.
Okay, well, I'm going to bed. So other mommy, you got this.
Tag, you're in.
Yes.
But how beautiful is that she's connected to that presence, and how nurturing or safe that must have felt for her to be able to know that, okay. And it gives you some relief too. Like you're off duty.
Yeah. And, I think as when you and I were children, that probably would have been shut down. And that would have been like, oh, do not talk about that. And honestly, it's her gift. And you want to make sure that she honors that and that she sees it and that she doesn't just forgo it.
Yeah, because it is really normal. Any of us who we go back and ask our parents if we have had imaginary friends or if we ever talked about other, people or things, right? Like we were all probably connected to that energy, and there wasn't enough information or awareness around what it could be to really foster any kind of discussion around it. So I wanted to circle back with that in mind to something that you said in your awakening story, which was that you always like spirit has always been there for you, even from a
Yeah.
young age. So what was that like for you as a kid?
It was really interesting because I grew up in Peru. So I lived in Peru from the moment I was born until I was about 7 or 8 years old. And I remember going to my grandmother's farm where she had no running water and no electricity, and she lived there by herself, but she was never scared. And looking back at it, I now remember where people would like make a comment about like, oh, she's there doing like her thing. And I think my grandmother just was always really connected with spirit. I know that there were a couple of nights when she would tell me, oh, my cousin such and such passed, and she hadn't even, gotten a notice about it. She just knew.
Yeah.
And so I think it's definitely in my ancestral line. I was always really curious about things growing up. I always played with like runes and like Chinese divination sticks. And I was really into like astrology and wanting to know more. And so I was always really curious about it. But at the same time, I was always told, don't mess with that. And so gradually I just started distancing myself from it because it's what I was led to believe. But I always just kind of sensed that there was something there with me. I can just feel it in my body. I can feel the energy of when there is another being within the space, if that makes sense.
Yeah, totally. And I think that's an important point because Anna and I obviously know each other well. As you mentioned, we were roommates in graduate school, but we joke about how that was just the setup for needing to support each other on our own awakening journey. Honestly, what,
Yeah.
15 years later? I mean, it wasn't
Mhm.
like right away at all. Neither one of us were awake when we happened to just, that was divinely led too, the way we ended up as roommates in the first place. But that being said, we do receive our information very differently. So will you talk a little bit about how you get your information in terms of, I know your body is incredibly sensitive, your visual is very heightened, but how you get your information and how that's led you to the work that you're now doing?
Yeah. So, when I first started going through the awakening process, everything was visual, right? So, from like the actual animals that would show up to then the messages that I would receive in my dreams. I remember when I had a new guide step in, I actually in my dreams saw a phone and I got a text message and it said, new guide, name Michelle. And then I saw a blue color and that was it. So, I definitely think that, the clairs that are the most aware for me are, my clairsentience, because I can feel the presences. My guides each have a different call sign for me. So my first guide, Jose, he would always put like a strong hand like on the left shoulder. Victoria likes to touch like right here. And so these are call signs that I've learned to recognize. And honestly, this is something anybody can do too. You just have to learn to sit in your own power, figure out what is yours and what is not. And then you invite your guides in to give you a special call sign so that you always know who it is that you are speaking with. So I learned how to do that. And then I just always had very vivid dreams. And so they utilize that site for me. Now, when I go into meditation, oftentimes they will show me different images that tell a story of what it is that they're trying to communicate to me. That's actually something that I utilize when I go into the Akashic records quite a bit, is they will play it out kind of like a movie. And then I will also sense the feelings and the emotions of what's happening within the scene. And that's how they give me the narrative and the message. And then I also have claircognizance as well. Sometimes things just kind of pop into my mind and I just know. And it's funny because growing up and as I was in college, my friends always said that I was the voice of reason. And it's not that I necessarily knew like any better. It's just that somehow, I just got the message and I just put it out there. Whenever I've gone on outings with my husband, there's been times when, like how people just sometimes will just approach you and just start telling you like their whole life story. Well, that always like seems to happen to me. And he's always like, are we really doing this again? Like, is somebody coming up to you and just going to tell you their whole life story? And I'm like, I don't know. Like, it just happens. Like, they just do it. And I think it's because spirit leads them because they have a message that they want me to relay. So again, that voice of reason and the ability to listen openly without judgment are some of the ways that spirit really like has led me to being able to help others, but then also how to receive the same messages. Because sometimes you never know, somebody might say something within their story that clicks in my own brain. And I'm like, oh, that sounds really relevant to me, of like what I'm going through right now. And it's like, that's their way of delivering the message as well.
Yeah. And I think it's worth noting that's a form of clairaudience, right? When people's friends or others, if you're hearing repeated messages from different people, or, maybe you see something on a billboard and then you hear it on a radio, and spirit's going to work with whatever senses you're receptive to. They're going to work with you the way you're most able to receive and hear their messages. And so I love how you use the earth. You're very connected to the environment. And I love the connection there between, it sounds like your grandmother being really connected to the earth, right? And you really doing these rituals with your kids out with the earth for the equinox. But also you mentioned something about paying attention to the animals that showed up. And I want to highlight that because I do that too. Anytime an animal catches my eye, or, I'm seeing multiple of the same animal, and it's, at a moment I'm having a certain thought, or, I'm paying attention to the thought and then paying attention to the animal that shows up. And then I'm Googling spiritual meaning of a deer or spiritual meaning of a crawfish, like you said, right? Because there's a message in it for us, for sure.
Yeah, we just have to be really open and be really aware of our surroundings. And I will say that once I started going through my awakening, the world looked very different to me. Colors all seemed brighter, and I felt like I was seeing things much more clearly for the first time. Like that veil of fog had been lifted from my eyes.
Yeah, clear seeing is an important thing, seeing the truth of how things really are, because the ego, this earth plane, and the ego really separate us from our source if we allow it.
Yeah. And my ego has a tendency to be very strong. And if I am not aware of it, and if I am not keeping it in check, he will creep in very stealthily. And so I know that my ego has hijacked my oracle cards before, and my pendulum even. So it's really important to be able to recognize when a message is loving versus a message that is not loving. And so you know that if a message is loving, it's always going to be from your guides and from spirit and your angels. But if it's not necessarily in that direction, then it's usually ego-based. So spirit teaches us the skills to be able to recognize those moments. We just have to really be aware of when they're coming through, and always keeping those reminders in our own heads.
I feel like that's such an important part, discernment. I feel like spirit always talks to me about discernment, discerning between soul speak and discerning between ego speak, which is what you're saying. And it is something that's a work in progress. And I think something we constantly have to bring conscious awareness to, because the ego upgrades as we evolve. And so the ego is a tricky little bugger, because he can definitely, and I think you and I both always refer to the ego as a male, because it's like this lower, it's the lower, and the ego is lower masculine energy, right? So it does feel like it. And I know, I think of my ego as this like barking dog that needs to be in a cage. And I know you shared that you're like this monkey that has a steel box that you lock away.
Yes, right? Got to put him away.
Yeah, exactly. So that can be a really helpful technique for dealing with the ego, is like picturing with your mind, like locking that inner critic, that voice, that monkey, that barking dog away in its cage, in its crate, and being very definite about not allowing it to run the show. Because for me, it definitely was like in the driver's seat of my life for many, many years. And so when you've got a strong mind, it takes more discipline and focus, I think, to keep it out of the way.
Yeah. And I think that's something that's really important for people to understand, that that's not something that happens for you overnight, recognizing when it is ego that's coming in, especially when you are just awakening, because you are already very vulnerable. Your emotions and your feelings are already pretty raw, because usually there's been some sort of trauma or something that has triggered it. But maintaining that sense of trust and that faith that you are being supported and guided by spirit, that these negative thoughts that might creep in are not true. And as you start developing that sense of confidence and that sense of self-worth, like coming back to your divine self of who it is that you truly authentically are, then that's when it becomes a lot easier to manage your ego.
Absolutely. We all have our own journey with getting our ego out of the driver's seat for sure. And while there's definitely similarities along the path, I think that one thing that it takes to flip the switch for everyone is unique. And I know for me, it was my own coach said to me one day that this is where you're headed, right? Like you're headed to spirit being in the driver's seat, right? Working for spirit. And so how long you want to suffer along the path is totally a choice. So you can keep making the choice to align with your ego, or you can choose to align with the light, align with the truth of who you are, and tell that ego to get out of the way. And for me, that was enough to flip the switch, because I was like, yeah, I don't feel like doing this anymore, right? Like we all need to have that done point. So it can be, it's levels and layers, I guess is what I'm trying to say, because we all have to reach those points where we've had enough and we're so motivated by our pain that you get to that certain done point that the pain of staying the same is more painful than the pain of changing.
Correct. Yes. I think for me, when I got to the point of having seen how often spirit was supporting me and how good it felt when I moved with the guidance. And even when I was scared to move with the guidance, I always knew that spirit was going to catch me. It's kind of like each time they asked me to do something, and I never thought I was going to be in the spiritual healing business, to be honest with you. I know that when you read my hands, it said that I was a healer. And I was like, well, I'm in this just to like try and heal myself first and foremost. Like, I feel like I need a lot of my own healing before I can even try and help anybody else. But each time that spirit asked me to do something or gave me guidance in a certain direction, there was always like a little bit of sense of fear. Like, what is going to happen to me if I do that? Are things going to change drastically? Am I going to be okay with those changes that it brings? That sense of not knowing for me was really challenging. But then each time I actually took the step, spirit was always there to catch me. It wasn't like I was there doing it alone. And I knew, like, even if I was jumping off of the diving board, that they're going to be down there with me, like with a flotation device. So it's not like I'm going to be swimming across the pool by myself. So just having that sense of trust in what is going to be happening is really what I think has helped a lot with keeping that ego at bay.
That's so beautiful, because trust is really important. And some of us struggle with trust. I'm one of those people. I feel like that in my hands, that is one of the lessons that I've come into this lifetime to learn about is how to trust. So as much as I'm walking this path every single day, and I'm a beyond believer because I have so much evidence that it's true at this point. But even still, there's that part of me that you want to trust what you know or what you can see. And so over time, I love that you said every time you trust, right, it just reinforced that trust for you. Where for some people, they might need to have some of these experiences to learn, like, oh yeah, the net is there every time I make a move. Because that's another thing that the spirit world will say, right? Because for someone who doesn't trust like me all the time, I'm like, no, spirit, you go first. You like,
yes.
Lay out the red carpet, let me know how all of this is going to unfold, because I'm not interested in any kind of uncertainty. Right. And then spirit's like, no, that's not how this works. You step, then we step, you step, then we step. And, eventually you get to a point where it's almost comical, because you have so much evidence of how this is all working and how we are always supported. And the spirit world is always conspiring in our favor, that it gets hard to not trust at a certain point, right?
Well, it's almost like parenting, right? Like, you're there to like learn a lesson. That's what we're here for. And as like my kids doing their homework, I'm not going to do the homework for them, but I am going to sit there with her and I'm going to help guide her and I'm going to help give her some hints. And that's really kind of how spirit operates. They just showed me that. They pointed me to the table with me sitting with Kate and doing homework. She has to learn the lesson and I'm there to help guide her towards that lesson.
That's perfect. That's such a good example. So with that in mind, how were you guided into the healing work that you're now doing for yourself and others? Because your guides work with you very differently than my guides work with me.
Oh my gosh, that is so funny, because my guides, I've gone to many different healers and my guides have never really allowed them to do the healing for me. So they've always had healers give me the steps or give me an outline of how to go about doing the healing, and then told me, okay, your guides are going to guide you through the rest of it. You just trust and you go do it. And that's really how I started. As far as, first they gave me macrame. And so during the COVID lockdown, I was looking for something to do after the girls went to bed. And all of a sudden I remembered, oh, in second grade, I did this macrame pot hanger for my mom for Mother's Day. And I really liked doing that project. Like, I'm not an artist, but that was fun. I can tie knots. So I ordered a kit on Amazon, and I spent the next few nights just figuring it out and going about it. And I ended up loving it. And then gradually, not even gradually, because 3 pieces later, Spirit was like, start an Instagram account and post your macrame work there. And I started getting orders for it. And so I said, okay, I'm putting myself out there and I'm putting my art out there, something I probably would have never done had they not had me do it. And then they started teaching me how to infuse the artwork with energy. And a lot of it had to do with just learning how to feel the energy channeling through my own body and extending out through my hands and weaving it into each of the pieces that I'm making. Everything that I make is designed with an intention for healing, and then it's infused with the energy to assist with that healing. So they've started me there, first of all. And then they started working with me on channeling energy for my own physical healing. I think it just kind of happened where I was in meditation one day and I just started feeling the energy kind of coursing through my body. And they said, see how that feels? Now this is how we're going to do it. And they literally had me break it out step by step by step on how it is that I was going to channel energy for my own healing, targeting different areas of my body, targeting different emotions. And then they said, okay, now you're going to do this for the girls. And so they once again showed me in meditation how it was that I was going to go about it. And then they said, now you're going to do it for other people. And for a while there, I was not confident enough to do it live via like a Zoom or anything. So I remember I would tell people, we're both going to go into meditation at this time, and we're both going to do it. I'm going to send you the energy, and then I'll touch base with you afterwards and see how you felt. Like, I had such like a fear of like rejection or not being accepted that I just did not have the courage to be able to do it live. And I remember one day they said to me, you're just going to do this live and it's how it's going to be. And I said, okay, well, I will try it. They brought me the perfect client because she was so patient and so sweet through all of my tech issues. And she just, she felt the energy. She really validated for me the difference that it had made for her. And from there on, I just started doing it. They just kept bringing in different clients for me, people that kept signing up for my sessions. And I just started doing it one after the other after the other. I've always been really attracted to the angels and the archangels. And I'm not really sure if that is something that comes from the Catholic background or if it's just something that has always been there for me. But, we all have different types of beings on our spiritual support teams. And for me, each of my guides that has stepped forward has been an angel. And so I think it was just in my spiritual contract that I just work with angels, and that's the realm that I channel. And so, yeah, they wanted me to serve as a channel for their energetic healing. We all have our own divine will. So therefore, I see myself as the person that works with the other person to convince them to accept the healing that the angels have for them. Because our angels really, they cannot step in and provide healing for us without having that permission. So I seek out the permission and I bring forward whatever it is that the angels and their guides have agreed to bringing forward for their highest and best.
Yeah. And I have been on the receiving end of your angelic healing quite a bit. And most recently, right, in this period of COVID that I had, it was very cool. Anna set up a healing chamber with Archangel Raphael for me that I entered into every night that I went to sleep. And I woke up each morning feeling the energy of spirit really carrying me through the day, even as my body was trying to recover from the illness. And that was just one sampling of all the energy work that she has done with me. But I've always said to you that I don't know how you pack the punch of energy in the amount of time that you did in 15 15 minutes, Anna accomplishes what I usually experience in like an hour session. But honestly, I experience even more in the 15 minutes. It's wild how it happens.
Yeah, I think that might be part of like parenthood where I've just learned to become really efficient. Like sometimes I only have 10 minutes for meditation, and my guides and angels know that in that 10 minutes, we have to pack a wallop of information. So my body just learned how to handle that. And I'm very blessed. I'm very blessed to be able to share that with other people and to be able to provide that service. Everything that I have learned and all the skills that I have learned as I've been going through my own healing, whether it's been channeling energy or whether it's been going into the Akash records, Spirit has really had a purpose in guiding me towards it. So they teach me how to do it for myself, how it can benefit me. And then they teach me, okay, now you're going to go out and do that for others.
Yeah, I love that you're mentioning that because I think that's what happens for a lot of us, right? Like we go out in search of these modalities or people or things that can help support us. And when we see the benefit in our own life, and then we're like, wow, we can really share this with other people. And so I think what's so important about you acknowledging that is also that we come fully programmed with everything we need to be able to heal ourselves. And while, yes, we have support outside of ourselves from other human beings who are powerful healers or our spiritual support teams, we are really our own best healers, and everyone else is supporting that within us. But I don't subscribe to the guru method because there's nobody better for you and your own healing than you and your own spiritual support team.
Correct. I think, there's healers that can serve as mentors and can serve as guides, but ultimately you're responsible for yourself, right? And you are your own divine essence. So there is no reason why you cannot do this for yourself. Yes, you might need a little bit more guidance on how to go about it, but we can all do it.
Yeah. I agree. And I think it's important because I think sometimes this is one of the ways we give our power away, right? Where I know, in my early days of just spiritual seeking and getting tarot readings and things like that, I felt I was a little bit of a tarot junkie. Like I had a reader that I would go to constantly and I wanted to know the answers. I wanted to know the answers. And I can see only now, I mean, that was an important lesson for me because I was allowing my behavior to be influenced by outside opinion. And it wasn't that the information was inaccurate because it wasn't, but it was important for me to run that guidance through my own filter, right? Through my own guidance system in order to understand what was going to be right for me. And when we don't rely on filtering our own information through our own personal guidance systems, we are giving our power away, right? Yeah. We're saying that someone else knows better for you than you know better for you. And that's just not the case. But learning how to trust ourselves is part of the journey as well. And I know that is a big part of my journey, not only learning how to trust spirit, right? But if I'm not trusting spirit, that's because I'm really not trusting myself.
Yeah. And I think, as we're going through our processes, you have to be kind of careful because we can be so desperate to heal quickly and to skip steps. And we can find there's a lot of information out on the internet that's not accurate, that's not necessarily truthful, that's not what it is that is going to guide us to our highest and best. And it's so important to use your discernment and to use your body and feel into it and see if it's accurate and if that's actually what it is that you are being guided or led to.
Yeah. And you're going to feel it in your body. And this is where, when we don't trust ourselves, we tend to go right to the mind and we want to justify all the reasons that we should or shouldn't do something. But intuition is not logical. It's in the body. And so you're going to feel what a yes feels like in your body. You're going to feel what a no feels like. For me, a no is more this feeling of constriction or tightness or tension. And it's subtle, but it's noticeable. And a yes for me is this feeling of being relaxed or more, my body opens or there's a easefulness. There's no tension anywhere. So I would encourage listeners to start playing around with that. Like, what does a yes feel like in your body? And what does a no feel like in your body? Because that's where we have to go to. We have to go within and go to the body if we want to start connecting to that intuitive place.
So true.
So Anna, for as we're talking about all of these different, levels and layers, what would you say was the most challenging aspect of the awakening process for you?
Oh, I think the most challenging part really had to do with overcoming that sense of fear and overcoming those limiting beliefs that I had had ingrained in me for, since I was a kid, overcoming what society had programmed into me and really being open and understanding that there was something else out there and that I really just had to trust and believe in it. And when I started trusting and believing, new blessings started coming into my life. Like the minute that I started grasping those concepts, the sense of gratitude, raising my vibration, really, like being thankful for what I had and seeing things through a new lens, then more miracles would come forward.
Yeah, it's so good. Because that's what happens, right? When what's that quote? Like when we start looking at things differently, the things we look at change. Or when we change the way we look at things, the things we look at change. And I feel like that's what you're describing so beautifully.
Exactly.
Yeah. Our perspective is everything, right? I mean, I've always been a glass half empty kind of girl, but over time, I've really had to train myself out of that.
Yeah. Like when you go through life, like expecting the worst. And when you expect the worst is going to happen. And if you expect good things to come forward, then good things are going to continue to come forward. It's that law of attraction. What you put out there is what you're going to get.
Yeah. And our focus is really important in the process, where we're focused, like you're saying, on the lousy or what we don't want, or, what we do want and where we're headed. So with that in mind, where are you headed with your healing work?
Yeah. I always ask spirit to bring me the people that I need to support. And so I'm just moving one step at a time and just letting spirit do the work that they need to do. I always tell them I work with you, not for you. That's something that's really important for me, in that sense of owning your own power. But I do understand that there are elements that I just need to turn over to them. And when the time is ready, that they will bring that forward for me. So right now, I do that angelic energy healing that I offer one-on-one client sessions, but I'm also starting to branch out and doing some energetic circles monthly. I have a newsletter that I send out where I channel the energies of the different archangels once a month, just a message. And so really it's just about having my voice and my truth be heard and communicating the messages that they feel are going to be supportive in helping others in their own awakening and ascension process.
Amazing. And how can my listeners support you?
Yeah, so I have an Instagram account. It's called Guided Knots. My whole business is Guided Knots. They gave me that name because, once again, when I was starting out with macrame, everything that I did was in working with collaboration with my guides. So we make knots and we untangle knots together. So both physically and figuratively. So yeah, so you can find me on Instagram and give me a follow. You can also go to my website, guidedknots.com, and sign up for my newsletter. I'm pretty active on Instagram, so you will see a lot of the work that I've done, and you will also see announcements about different energy circles that I might be holding as months come up.
And we will include all of that information for our listeners in the show notes. And I don't know why I feel like I want to ask you, is there a message that the angels are wanting to bring forward?
So, Archangel Gabriel has been with us throughout this entire process. When Lindsay and I first started recording, when we were about to record, she was like really nudging me and she's like, bring me in, bring me in. Her message is really about allowing yourselves to feel supported. Invite us to come in and help you. Remember that we cannot help you unless you invite us. We are always here and we're always ready and willing to step in and help you. If you are a parent, call upon me specifically to help guide your children. I work with sensitives. Keep that sensitivity alive in your children. Do not let it filter out. Do not let it fade out. Call upon us to help guide you. We are here. We are supporting you every minute, every day. You are loved. You are protected.
Amazing. Thank you. And I just want to clarify something because I asked you this before we started recording, but I feel like other people might have this question because I've, my own work with the archangels. I've always known Archangel Gabriel to be a more masculine energy. And when I asked you about that, you gave me a really interesting answer that from a spiritual perspective makes so much sense. So can you share? I asked you, is this a different Archangel Gabriel, or is she the same as the masculine energy that I feel?
So our archangels carry both energies in them. And when I was first going through my awareness process, I felt Archangel Gabriel in the more masculine side. And I think that's because I was more in touch with my masculine side at the time. But as I've started gradually shifting more into the feminine and trying to achieve that balance, she's been coming through as a more feminine energy. So it's really funny because their energies can shift. And as I'm channeling different archangels, sometimes you'll hear me refer to them as a he or a she. And that's because of the energy that they are bringing forward at the time.
That's fascinating to me. I never knew that. And I love that. So fun.
Yeah, it's something that I just recently started learning. There's so much to learn about the archangels. And, the archangels that we know about are not all the archangels that there are. So I think right now, maybe we're aware of maybe 50 or 55 or so archangels that have come forward. Religion teaches us really about maybe 6 or 7, but there's so many more than that. And as Earth's vibration continues to rise and increase, more archangels are coming forward whose names we don't know yet. And they're coming here to support us and support our growth and our expansion for the planet and for all of humanity.
They're such powerful helpers along our path.
Yes.
So Anna, one final fun question here. What advice would you have for anyone starting out on their own awakening journey?
I think the best advice I have for you is trust. Trust and be open. Trust that you are always infinitely and divinely guided, that you're here for a purpose, and seek out what that purpose is and understand it, because that will lay out that framework of what it is that is going to make you feel whole and make you feel alive, and finding that passion to, work through your human existence.
Yeah. And I think you really embodied that as you shared with us throughout this podcast. You just trusted that the right person was showing up at the right time, and you just followed exactly what spirit plopped right in front of you. So it didn't seem like you needed to effort to find the things that you were looking for. They really just appeared as you stayed trusting and open.
Yeah. I think as long as you keep your vibration high and as long as you remain positive, then spirit has a way to be able to work for you and to help guide you. And don't get me wrong, there were moments when I did not follow the guidance, and spirit let me know that I was not following the guidance. And usually it was through some little cringe that happened in my body or something. And they'll let you know right away. It's you're not doing what we told you to do, and it's going to become harder for you because you're not taking the easy road that we're pointing you to. So you're still going to get there, but you just might have more mountains to climb. And I finally learned that if I just follow the guidance, then my path is going to be a lot easier to navigate, and I won't have as many obstacles in my way, hopefully.
Absolutely. We can make this way easier on ourselves if we just trust and follow the guidance. But, every now and then our humanness, that humanness just gets in the way.
Yes, I think I've always heard, that Earth School is not for the weak of mind and weak of heart. So the fact that you are all here on this planet, living this earthly human existence, grasp onto that. That is how powerful you are, that you were chosen and that you accepted this mission of coming into this planet. There's times when I look at it and I'm like, if I had to do this again, I don't think I would choose this. So there's got to be an easier plane to be on out there.
Right.
Why I chose that, I don't know. So
little by little, we're learning what our earthly missions are. Well, Anna, thank you so much for being here. This has been such a fun conversation, and I will look forward to directing all of the listeners through the show notes to all things Anna so that they can benefit like I have from your amazing healing work.
Thank you so much, Lindsay. And thank you to everybody tuning in. I am so grateful for you. Thank you for being here and for listening to what I had to say.
Thank you so much for listening to the Guided Podcast. If you enjoyed this episode, I would be so grateful if you would share it with a friend or even leave me a review so we can ensure that it makes its way into the ears of listeners who need to hear these messages most. Until next time, may you remember how guided you truly are.